We have completed the first part of Kima Kima, beginning the second Charbet, Rishit Michat Gulatenu, the beginning of the sprouting of our redemption. Perek Aleph, first chapter, page 195. Medinat Yisrael Mitzvot Aseh Min HaTorah. The state of Israel is a positive commandment from the Torah. The Parshas Maseh, we read, V'harashtem es haaretz v'yashavtem ba, and you will inherit the land, and you will dwell in it. Ki lechem nesati es haaretz, because I gave to you the land, l'reshes hosah, to inherit it, to live in it. The Ramban enlightens us on the spot. Source 2. Al dati zu mitzvos asehi. According to my opinion, this is a positive commandment. Yitzave osam sheyeshvu be'er aretz. He commanded them that they should live in the land. V'yershuosa, and inherit it. Ki hu nasna lahem, because he gave it to them. V'lo yimasu b'nachalas Hashem, and they should not consider, they should not find disgusting the inheritance of God. I've given you here the rest of the Ramban, that you shouldn't consider, or if it would, you would consider to go and conquer other lands like Syria, Shinar, present-day Transjordan, Jordan, or any other land and live in it. You have transgressed the mitzvah of God. And our rabbis were very stressing of the mitzvah of living in Eretz Yisrael, that they say it's prohibited to leave it, and they judge a woman that rebels against her husband, that she said she doesn't want to make Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, and so to a man that doesn't want to make Aliyah when his wife does, so that we see that we are commanded in this mitzvah, and it is considered a positive commandment. And it's talked about in many places, so on. In the Ramban's commentary on the Rambam and Sefer HaMitzvos, at the end he takes away, he argues with the Rambam that certain mitzvos are not mitzvos, and therefore, since he has to come up with the exact same number of positive and negative mitzvos, at the end of his notes on the Rambam, he tells us what things he thinks are mitzvos that the Rambam left out. So he writes in the fourth positive mitzvah that he adds, Shenitztavinu l'reshes haaretz, that we have been commanded to inherit the land. Asher nesan kel yisbarach v'yisalei lavosenu, that the blessed God gave to our forefathers, l'Abraham litzak liYaakov, to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, v'lo nezva b'yad zulasenu, and we should not abandon it in the hand of anyone else, min ha'omos, of the nations of the world, or l'shmama, or to allow it to remain desolate. Now, from thus far in the Rambam, we see that the mitzvah of Yeshuv in Eretz Yisrael has two separate parts. The first one, V'lo ne'ezva b'yad zulasenu min ha'omos, that we should not abandon the land of Israel to any one of the nations of the world. So the Rambam is telling us that we must be concerned that Eretz Yisrael is under Jewish rule and not under the rule of another nation. The second point that you see in the Ramban, he says, or l'shmama, or to desolation, we must be concerned that Eretz Yisrael is Mushevet, is dwelled in, is settled, and that it shouldn't be a desert, a swamp, all of these things. These two things, these two aspects of the mitzvah of Yeshuv Aretz can be seen in the pasuk that we started with. V'harashtem es haaretz v'yashavtem ba, and you will inherit the land and you will dwell in it. Ki lechem nesati es haaretz l'reshes hosah, because I gave it to you to inherit. V'harashtem es haaretz v'yashavtem ba, v'harashtem es haaretz sha'aretz tiyeh biyadenu, that the land should be in our hands. Tachat shiltutenu, under our control. V'yashavtem ba, and you will live in it. She'anachnu niyashev osah, that we should make it dwelled in. So To stress these points, the Ramban continues, V'al tishtabesh v'tomar, you should not become confused and say, Ki ha-mitzvah hazos hi ha-mitzvah b'milchemes shivas ha'amimim, that this is simply the commandment to make war on the 7 nations. Ein hadavar ken, it is not this. Aval ha'aretz lo naniach osav b'yadam, we're not allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael in the hands of the 7 nations. V'lo biyad zulasam min ha'umos, b'dor min hadoros, and we cannot leave it in the hands of any nation from the nations, in any generation from the generations. Im ken hi mitzvahs aseh ladoros. So too, so we see there's a positive commandment for all generations. This last point is it's extremely important, because one of the things the Rambam says is that a mitzvah cannot only be for one period of time. It could be only when the temple is standing, there's such a mitzvah, but that as long as the temple is standing, in the future when the temple is standing, the mitzvah will still be exist. The mitzvah, or I should say it in a different way, the mitzvah always exists, but we are simply not capable of fulfilling that mitzvah at certain times. But the mitzvah of Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah for all generations. And it does not only mean that we have to conquer the land in the time of Yahushua from the 7 nations and live in it at that time, but it's for all other times as well. That is, that this mitzvah, both parts of it, that the first one is that there should be Jewish rule over Eretz Yisrael, and this Jewish independent rule can only be achieved through a state. There's no other way to have independent rule without a state. Therefore, the Torah commands us not only to settle the land, but also to rule over it. That is, as I just said, that we must create an independent state. So it comes out to fulfill the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael in its completely, that you have to have both aspects of it. And those things can only be achieved with Jewish independence in the land of Israel. One should note that this mitzvah of Yishuv Haaretz, that includes the rule of Eretz Yisrael, the nation of Israel, over its land, can be achieved if the government is a tzaddik like David HaMelech or Shlomo his son, or whether he's a Rashi like Yerovam ben Nevat and Achav ben Omri. Clearly, we do not desire a king like Yerovam or Achav, but we want a king who's a tzaddik like David, Shlomo, Yoshiyahu, Tzidkiyahu, Chizkiyahu, and so on. But one must know that the mitzvah can be fulfilled either way, even if it's ruled by a Yerovam or an Achav. If you think about it, you can have tefillin that are mehudar, or tefillin that are kosher b'diavad. When you put on either one of these 2 pairs of tefillin, you have fulfilled the mitzvah of wearing tefillin. Obviously, it's better to wear tefillin that are mehudar than tefillin that are not mehudar, that are not beautiful. That's clear. But either way, the mitzvah of tefillin can be fulfilled. The next section, Are Yehuda B'chor Banan, starting on the bottom of page 196. In order to understand properly what Israeli rule in their land means, we need the help of the words of the Gemara in Moed Katan Chaf Av Amud Aleph, that talks about the obligation of tearing a garment as a sign of Avelus. When the Jew sees the cities of Jerusalem, of Yehuda or Yerushalayim, when they're destroyed, there's an obligation to tear Kriya. As we see in the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Chalbo, Amar Ula. Rabbi Chalbo said in the name of Ula, Beira, that it should be done with awe. Amar Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar continues, Haroe Ar Yehuda b'chorbanam Omer. The one who sees the cities of Yehuda when they're destroyed, he says the pasuk, Are kodshecha hayu midbar. Your holy cities have become a desert. The Korea, and then you tear Korea. Yerushalayim b'chorbana. When you see Yerushalayim and it is destroyed, Omer, you say the pasuk, Zion midbar haisa. Zion became a desert. Yerushalayim shmama. Jerusalem is desolate. The Korea, and you tear Korea. Beis hamikdash b'chorbana. When you see the temple, when it is destroyed, Omer, you say, Beis kodshenu v'sifartenu asher hilelucha avosenu haisa l'sreifa eish v'chol machmadeha haya l'chorba. The Korea. Our holy temple, our grandeur that our forefathers praised you there, has been burnt with fire, and all our beloved things were destroyed. And you tear Korea. These are psukim from Yeshayahu. So a Jew that sees the cities of Yehuda destroyed, he has to tear Korea. On his clothing is a sign of mourning, just like a child tears Korea when one of their parents dies. The pain and suffering is very great at that moment. The Beis Yosef, Rav Yosef Karo, wrote, he discusses what does it mean destroyed. How do we exactly define what it means a destroyed city? If you would ask us, we would of course say it means that it's been torn down, it's desolate, it's a wreck. However, the Beis Yosef considers two possibilities in source 2. V'hai arei Yehuda b'chorbanam. What does it mean the cities of Yehuda are in their destruction? To ka'amar, tainu shem chorvot ve'ein behem yishuv klal. That is, they're destroyed. No one's living in them. Avalim yesh behem yishuv, but the people are living in them. Afal pi shem bidei goyim, even though they're ruled by the non-Jews. Hayan nir l'chora de'ein tzarech likra, that it would appear that one would not have to tear Kriya. Ve'afshar kol shehen bidei goyim. And it seems all the more so if their hands in the excuse me. First, let's look at this, what I just wrote. No, I'm sorry, we'll continue. Ve'efshar, the kol shen bidei goyim, and as long as they're in the hands of the non-Jews, afal pi yesh behem yishuv, even if there are Jews living in them, b'chorbanam mikrit, it's called destruction, v'kenikar, and this is the principal the position. The first possibility to understand what it means, b'chorbanan, in their destroyed, means that no one's living there. But if there would be Jews living there, according to this, as long as there are people living in it and it's built up, even if it's ruled by non-Jews, it's not called destroyed, and there would be no obligation of tearing Kriya and mourning over it in this situation. Because, in fact, they're built up. There are people living there, Jews living there. The second possibility, however, is it's not dependent upon Jews living there or being built up. But as long as the rule, the dominion, is in the hands of non-Jews, this is a situation of destruction. And as long as this is true and you see the places that were under Jewish independence, and now they are not, you have to tear Kriya. These two possibilities of destruction are before us. One is a technical understanding of destruction, and one is a national understanding of destruction. The Beis Yosef decides that the second of these two possibilities is the principal one. That is to say, that as long as Jews are living there, it's beautifully built up, and everyone has a beautiful house, a nice garden around it, all of these things that one would like, but non-Jews are ruling over the land, this is called destruction. And over this destruction, one has to tear kriya as a sign of mourning. You do not tear kriya on the technical Horban. This Horban, it's possible to overcome. We can rebuild what was destroyed. But what we do tear kriya over is the national Horban, the national destruction, that non-Jews are ruling over our land. Yoel Sirks, the Bach, in his commentary on the Torah, has no doubt whatsoever as to what destruction means. He immediately decides, like the Beis Yosef, that the possibility is, it is only possible to say the second of the two possibilities of the Beis Yosef. The Bach writes, after analyzing a series of psukim concerning this, Upashutu, it is obvious. Tahai Are Yehuda b'chorbanan, what does it mean when the Gemara says, if you see the cities of Yehuda when they are destroyed? The Ka'amar Hainu, Afilu Yesham Yishuv, even if Jews are living there, even if people are living there. Kol Shiad Umos Shaletas Alav b'chorbanan Mikri. As long as the nations of the world are ruling over it, it is called destroyed. This is also how the Magen Avraham paskins in the Mishnah Berurah. If so, we must ask the question, why is it the Are Yehuda b'chorbanan, the cities of Yehuda when they're destroyed? Why don't we also tell kriya on Are Yisrael, the northern kingdom, when non-Jews are ruling over that? The answer to this is brought in the Peyas HaShulchan. The Peyas HaShulchan was written by one of the Talmidim of the Gaon, the Vilna Gaon, who made Aliyah shortly after the Gra's death, and wrote a important sefer on all the various mitzvahs, teluyos ba'aretz, and halachos of Eretz Yisrael. And he says, Ve'atam, what's the reason that we tear kriya over Yehuda, but not over Yisrael, meaning the Shomron or the Galilee or the Golan? And in fact, at the time when the Aliyah of the Talmidim of the Gaon was occurring, most of the Olim were living in the north, in Svas and Tveria and so on, not in Yerushalayim. So the Peyas HaShulchan explains why you wouldn't tear kriya on seeing Tzfas when it's ruled by non-Jews, but you would tear kriya on Hebron when it's ruled by non-Jews. Ve'atam, Tesham Iker Hamlucha Shel Yisrael Haisa, because the principal kingdom was in the south, not in the north. When you think of the history, the Malchei Yehuda, the descendants of David Melech, were the kings of Yehuda, not the kings of Israel. As long as Israel is given under the rule of the non-Jews, this is called destruction. But it isn't every destruction that requires kriya. It's only in the place where the destruction is most powerful, most strong, where we feel the destruction in a greater sense. And this is the place where the Jewish rule reached its pinnacle, reached its height. And when this area, the last to fall, is under non-Jewish rule, then we feel the pain much more. And as we should feel this pain, therefore, there is the obligation of kriya. It's interesting, if you think about the obligation of kriya, is when you see Yerushalayim destroyed, or the cities of Yehuda, or the temple, or when it occurs. So too, if you think about tearing kriya on a dead person, the kriya for a dead occurs at two times, the obligation. If you're present when the person dies, or when you take the person to be buried. And these are the points of the greatest pain that we have over the death. And that's why these 2 points have kriya. They're parallel to what we have here as well. So we see that the definition of destruction is the lack of Jewish rule over our land. And this destruction is principally in Yehuda. So we tear the Kriya over Yehuda. When the gates of Yehuda are destroyed, even if rule would still be in the hands of Jews, that would not create a Kriya because we could still rebuild, we could make something out of it. The Kriya is established over the national destruction and not over physical destruction. One should pay attention to the fact that from this way, the difference, it doesn't matter whether it's Chizkiyahu, who's the tzaddik, who does everything that is righteous in the eyes of God, or Achaz, his father, that was evil in the eyes of God. It's difficult for us to say these things, but we see that even though there was a great difference between Chizkiyahu, the king, who was very careful to encourage Talmud Torah, who spread Limud Torah throughout the Jewish people, and Chazal tell us about his reign in Sanhedrin, Tzadi Daled Amud Beit, source 5, Badku Midan V'ad Beersheva, that they checked in the time of Chizkiyahu Melech, from Dan in the far north to Beersheva in the south, V'lo Matzu Am Haaretz, Mikbas V'ad Antipatris. They didn't find an uneducated version, from Mikbas until Antipatris, from the east to the west. V'lo Matzah Tinok V'Tinokes Ish V'Isha Shlo Yehu Bekim V'Hilchos Tumah V'Tara. They didn't find a man, a child, boy child, a girl child, a man or a woman that were not experts in the laws of Tumah and Tara. But when we look at his father, the Navi tells us, source 6, Ben Esrim Shana Achaz B'Malcho. Achaz was 20 years old when he became king. V'lo asah ha'yashar b'nei Hashem. He did not do that which was good in the eyes of God, Hashem Elokav, K'David Aviv, like David his ancestor. V'yelech b'derech Malchei Yisrael. He went in the ways of the king of Yisrael. V'gamis b'no hevir be'esh. And also he passed his son through the fire. K'toavasa goyim asher horish Hashem otam mipnei b'nei Yisrael. Like the abominations of the non-Jews, that God disinherited them for the Jewish people. V'yizbach v'yiktar b'bamos. He sacrificed and he burnt incense on the altars. V'al hagvaos, and on the hills. V'tachas kol eitz ranan, and under every lush tree. So he was a paradigm of evil. Chazal tell us that he closed all the shuls and all the Batei Medrash, the study halls, to stop another generation of Talmidei Chachamim, in order to remove the divine presence from Klal Yisrael. It's a very long Gemara in Yerushalmi and Sanhedrin, Perek Yud Halacha Beis. Not for us to go into here, but you see he was the paradigm of someone that wanted to uproot Torah, very similar to in many ways, the early Reform movement in Germany, where, for instance, in Frankfurt, they filled in the mikveh with dirt so that no one could use it. Doing everything one could to uproot Torah. But even though we see this huge difference between these two kings, father and son, in terms of tearing Kriya, as long as it's ruled by Jews, the obligation to tear Kriya does not exist. Obviously, we do not want an evil king like Achaz, and we do like a righteous king like Chizkiyahu, his son. But we have to understand properly that in terms of the fulfillment of the mitzvah of Jewish rule of Eretz Yisrael, either one does it. We learn from all of this that from the time of the destruction of the temple until the 5th of Iyar, Hey Tafshin Samach, 1948, that Eretz Yisrael was defined as Chareva, destroyed, even in the places that were built up. Even if you want to take Tel Aviv in 1945, where it was already a significant city, because the non-Jews ruled over it. But from the 5th of ER, 5708, with the establishment of the State of Israel, Eretz Israel was defined as being built up. And at that point in time, one of the aspects of Yishuv Eretz Israel was fulfilled. And as we say, Shavtem es haaretz, you'll inherit the land. Shilton Yisrael ba'aretz, this is Jewish rule over the land. V'yashavtem ba, and the second part, Yishuv ba'aretz, actually living in the land. So it might be that you can only fulfill the mitzvah of living in the land when there already exists Jewish rule over the land. We will stop here tonight, and next week we will discuss Tisha B'Av in the time of the temple. It's interesting to note when we see the comparison between Achaz and Chizkiyahu. Achaz does everything he can to uproot Torah, and his son does everything he can to establish Torah. And either way, as we've said, we fulfill the mitzvah. It's like tefillin, they're mahudar, and tefillin, they're not mahudar. And also, if we think about what we just said, that it's possible only to fulfill the mitzvah of Yishuv Haaretz when there is Jewish rule, to a certain extent it creates a circular thing. You have to have Jews in the land in order to conquer it, in order to take control over it. But there may be no obligation to be there if there isn't Jewish rule over it. So which comes first, the chicken or the egg, so to speak? Having said all that, one of the Rav Shal Yisraeli, his first major work was Eretz Chemda, on the halachas of Eretz Yisrael, and he has a chakira there. He's asked, a shaila, whether there is always a mitzvah to try and conquer the land, or only if you can succeed in doing it. And he says, obviously, there is an idea of milchemes mitzvah, of fighting a war, and in a war to conquer, which we're allowed to do to conquer Eretz Yisrael, it is true that you put yourself in the position of sekanas nefashos, of a risk to your life. You could die. Now, if it's true that you have to put yourself in a situation of sekanas nefashos to conquer Eretz Yisrael, maybe 200 years ago Jews were required to do that, even though there was no possibility of success. And he rejects that, meaning there is an obligation when we can succeed to put one's life in danger for the state of Israel, so that there will be Jewish rule over Eretz Yisrael. However, if you're in a situation where you cannot succeed, it's not sakana, it's suicide. Meaning, sakana is there is a danger that you may be killed when you're doing something else. Whereas, if you're clearly going to be killed, and the result won't be achieved. If the result would be achieved, it might be a different case. There's a tshuva in the Rashba about someone who's going to be killed, and another Jew's going to be killed, and another Jew could save him from death by having his hand amputated. But if he has his hand amputated, he too might die. Either way, he'll save the other person. Now, there is a possibility that as a result of the amputation, they weren't as good as it then as they are now, that he may die. But he's clearly saving another life. It's possible that two people will live, although one won't have a hand. Therefore, it is allowed, the Rashba says, for the person to put himself in a position of danger, where he would be allowed to endanger himself in order to save someone else's life. If he would 100% die to save someone else's life, that he would not necessarily be allowed to do. He might be allowed to do it. But if you think about an anti-terrorist operation, think about Entebbe, right? There were Hasidic rebbes from the Turi Karta that attacked the raid on Entebbe because the soldiers didn't have the right to put themselves in a situation of sakana to save the Jews that might have their lives in danger in Entebbe. This clearly is not correct, meaning the whole nature of warfare is that a person puts themselves in a position of danger to achieve the goal. And Jewish independence, Jewish safety is of critical importance. It's necessary to be able for the Torah to be fulfilled properly, which requires Yishuv Haaretz. The mitzvahs Teluyas Ba'aretz, the mitzvahs of the Mikdash are well over half of the mitzvahs of the Torah. And therefore, if there is a chance of success, one would be required, or at least allowed, to put oneself into the situation of sakana. However, if there is no possibility of success, therefore one would not have to put oneself into a sakana.